So here we are heading into game week 2 in the new League of Ireland season. I'm here with Seán O'Connor. I suppose we have a quick look back to last week, the lessons from we'll have a different weekend this week, hopefully a full programme. We had a postponement last week and 21,000 in the Aviva for the derby, but probably back to normal this weekend?
Yeah, back to normal this weekend. 4 games to look ahead to this Friday night and 1 game on Saturday, Sligo on Saturday of course. It's always tricky the early weeks of the season. It's difficult to read too much into it. A lot of players still getting to know each other, still new signings bedding in, new tactical approaches bedding in, like we saw a different change of shape for Pats at the Aviva last Sunday. But I think there's a lot of bedding in still to do, but it kind of feels like back to normality now this weekend with the Aviva game. I know we were both there last Sunday. Like, there was a lot of debate about was it the right decision for Bose to move it. There was some Pats fans very unhappy with me, to say the least, for pointing out their banner and how I disagreed with it. I thought it missed the point of, you know, the exact reason why they moved it is because 17,000 more people got to see the game compared to if it was in Dalymount. So, but yeah, just a little bit on last week, like good wins for Derry City, really important to kick off the campaign with 3 points. James McLean's long-awaited homecoming, of course. Shelbourne and Waterford drawn as well. Drogheda with a big winner. But yeah, 5 great games to look forward to this weekend.
To me, the big takeaway from last weekend was Derry City being so poor in the first half of the first home game of the season, and then turning it around. To me, that showed they've a bit of steel about them, which maybe was questioned last year, the attitude and everything else, the fact that they've done that, turned around that deficit. And the run of games, I suppose, suits Derry the way it's going with the redevelopment of Ryan McBride Brandywell, having a run of games at home. They've got Dundalk this weekend. Dundalk not having had a game last weekend, still building their squad, quite a fragile squad at Dundalk. You think there's a chance for Derry to really make another statement?
I know some of the pundits during the week were saying, in their opinion, 12 months ago, Derry might have lost that or maybe even drew at the minimum, but shows a little bit of that experience coming in this season. James McLean, obviously, but others like Darragh Markey, James Clark, Patrick McLean, of course, players who know the league, know how to get over the line when it comes to the crunch, and obviously getting the 2 goals late on was absolutely crucial. But they have Dundalk this weekend, and all due respect to Dundalk, but I think most of us tipped them to go down this year. So if there was a game Tiernan Lynch's side wanted to have for the second game, make it 2 wins out of 2, 6 points out of 6, they'd probably take Dundalk. And as we mentioned there, Derry City having 4 home games to start the campaign, it's a huge chance to kick it off with 12 points. And like we were speaking to Paddy Barrett during the week, he was chatting about how Shelbourne's strong start to 2024, of course, when they went on to win the league under Damien Duff, how that was absolutely crucial. I think they won 5 out of the first 6 or 6 out of the first 7, something like that, how that really made the difference when it came to October, November.
What I took from last week, and looking at Shelbourne, they made the least number of signings of any of the top division clubs. Some of them had a complete overhaul. Waterford, Galway, clubs like that had a lot of new signings. Shells have only signed a couple, and they only had 1 new signing in the team last week. So I think that shows that Joy O'Brien is probably happy to rely very much on the squad of last year, embed in the likes of Freitas, or in case he did start, but the other players will probably come in. And I suppose we'll see a real test of Shelbourne in terms of how they're going to do this weekend, this season, how they're going to do when they play Shamrock Rovers, who are, you can argue, are they fresh from having no game last weekend, or did that give them a little bit more time to maybe just bed in the plans that they have for this season? So we'll see what Shelbourne have to offer when they play Shamrock Rovers.
It was funny, I was looking at the Shelbourne start, the 2024 campaign when they won the league, and obviously last week they kicked it off with a 1-1 draw away to Waterford, and then in 2024 they beat Shamrock Rovers 2-1 at home in the second game. So, you know, will lightning strike twice? There was a couple of fans during the week pointing out that fact that it's the same opening 2 games they had to 2024. But yeah, just in Shamrock Rovers, like there's 2 ways of looking at it. Are they, as you said, are they fresh, or are they lacking that little bit of game time the other 8 teams have had? And I was meant to be at Tala last week, obviously got called off their game against Dundalk, but I think for Shelbourne point of view, I watched their match against Waterford instead. I was really impressed with Orm Casey. His first start straight in beside Paddy Barrett, Cameron Ledwidge, did not look out of place whatsoever. Really strong in the air, really aggressive when it came to it. I know there was a lot of Shells fans hailing his performance as well, so he's really one to watch over the next couple of months.
Freitas is the Shells player I'm really looking forward to see. I mean, he's come from the Portuguese third division. We don't know the standard, so he could come in, and it's very hard to compare the top division to the third division in Portugal. I think he could be a sensation. He only got half an hour last week. I think that, as I said earlier, the plan for Joey O'Brien seems to be to bet in rather than throwing them all in, which Derry did last week. Derry had 6 new signings in the team against Sligo Rovers last week. So we'll see how does he come in? Does Joey O'Brien rotate that attack? How does he accommodate all those attacking players? Wood, Jarvis, Boyd, Freitas, how does he accommodate all those attacking players in the team?
It was funny during the week we were chatting to Paddy Barrett just about how miserable the rain and the weather has been the last couple of weeks, and he was making the joke how the new signings from abroad, Freitas as well, and their other player from Sweden, how they should have brought their wellies instead of their football boots the last couple of weeks. But just looking at Shelbourne Shamrock Rovers 2025, I think it was a win for each and 2 draws, so there really wasn't much to separate the sides at all. But just on Freitas there, you were saying, I remember we were speaking to John Caulfield before, and he was saying it's obviously Shelbourne have really targeted this specific signing with the Jamestown Analytics partnership. But speaking to John Caulfield before, when new players are coming into the league like that, they need time to bed in, and it's really either sink or swim. John Caulfield was saying, for every 4 signings you might make, 1 might come off, 2 might come off. It's kind of an unknown quality when they come into a league like this. Like, they had great success with Moses Dyer coming in the first half of last season, so we'll just have to wait and see. But I
think there was concern in Galway in terms of the amount of players they lost. They lost Ticky, they lost a lot of they lost Dyer mid-season and never really replaced him. And their test this weekend going to St. Pat probably did really hurt last week. Galway, I think, probably would have been happy with the draw last season, just with the turnover they had and everything else starting a new season. And again, I think it'll take a long time for the impact of the loss of Ollie Horgan last year to clear is the wrong phrase, but that is still affecting them, I think, as a group, that tragic loss. And to go to St. Pat's, who I think struggled a bit last week as well. I was on a call with Tom Gravosti, St. Pat's defender, earlier on, and I mean, they admit St. Pat's didn't create. Kasper Hrachka didn't make a save in the derby last week, so that's kind of an early concern for Pat's people. They have a light squad because they clearly have cut back the budget. They have a number of injuries. Max Mata, Simon Power, a couple of others are injured.
Zach Albacetti going off.
Zach Albacetti. They haven't really replaced Mason Melia, really. And I think if you're Galway, maybe you think this is a chance to go to see St. Pat's, see how restricted Pats were in attack against Bohemians last week, and to see is this a chance for Galway to go to Richmond Park and do something. This
is a really interesting one because you could really see it going either way. Seen a lot of the reports from Galway and the Galway fans that late goal they conceded to lose to Drogheda last week. They were kind of making the point how they were worried, fans were worried going into the game. They, didn't sign as many players they maybe would have liked. A lot of players left. They actually played okay, like they weren't too bad. David Hurley missing the penalty, obviously total turning point in the game, and obviously conceding the last minute winner. So while they did kick off the campaign with a defeat, some of the reports from the fans they weren't actually too bad. But then Pats, on the other hand, like, I was really disappointed with them the second half in the Aviva last Sunday. Like, didn't give Traska really one save to make. They were okay in the first half, but did not create anything in the second half. And I think Stephen Kenny admitted that at the end of the game. He said we would have liked to create more, obviously. And yeah, a couple of question marks. We'll have to wait and see what the prognosis is on Zach Albacetti, Max Mata, still out injured. There's just concerns amongst the fans for both sides, Pats and Galway, in this one, so that'll be really, I know you're heading to that, it'll be a really fascinating one to watch.
I think we should also mention Damien Byrne. We're recording the eve of the games of Damien Byrne's funeral today, which Damien was such an icon for St. Pat's, and it would have been an emotional day for a lot of people in the St. Pat's camp, laying to rest a cult hero like Damien Byrne. Drogheda and Waterford, I suppose, 2 clubs who would be reasonably happy with how the season started. Drogheda getting that late win in Galway, and Waterford clearly not happy to drop points, but having avoided defeat against Shelbourne. And again, as those new players bed in, John Daly again, he's relied very much on the squad they have and introducing the new signings bit by bit. But I think Drogheda, their American contingent in particular, looks like they've already bedded in fairly comfortably.
Yeah, and the New Zealand contingent as well. Got in, making himself an instant fans' favourite with that last-minute winner last week. So that was a big win for Drogheda last weekend, just kick off the season with 3 points. But as I mentioned earlier on, I watched Waterford against Shells last week, and the first 30-35 minutes it was just one-way traffic. Shelbourne all over them, really strong. Didn't give Waterford a sniff, and coming up to half-time, we were thinking, geez, this is going to be a really bad night for Waterford. Came out a total different side in the second half. I think John Daly made a triple change not too long after the restart. Really turned it around the second half.
Also probably shows the importance of McMullen to Waterford as well. Probably one of the most underrated keepers in the league last year.
Yeah, he was really strong. And Conan Noonan obviously getting the assist for Tommy Lonergan's equaliser. I have a exclusive chat with Conan Noonan coming out in Saturday's paper, talking about how the end to his time at Rovers, the best year of his life last year on loan, and now his fresh start on a permanent move. So he's one I'm really excited to watch this year. But yeah, I was really impressed with the second half response from Waterford last week. But we all know going to Drogheda is a very difficult place to go. There, Drogheda's first home game of the season. I'm sure the fans will be raring to go, so that'll be a good one to watch.
The final game of the weekend then, St Valentine's Day. What better way to spend the ones you love than going to the showgrounds for Sligo Rovers and Bohemians? And I think looking at Bohemians, interesting that the post-match comments from Alan Reynolds after the game, where he regrets not taking a chance on Hugh Martin, the 16-year-old who spoke to a number of people who watched Bohemians in pre-season, and anytime they saw Hugh Martin, they said this kid is going to be sensational. The people were talking about this is the next Michael Noonan. He was away with the Irish under-17s in midweek, scored the winner in against Hungary and Spain, and I think it'll be a challenge then. How does Alan Reynolds react to that? Of course, away to Sligo was the only goal that Lise Mousset around about this time last year scored his only goal for his first goal for Bohemians. But does Alan Reynolds shake it up? I think they'll, playing Conor Parsons as a false nine or as a striker, whatever you want to call him, didn't really impact the game. Missed his one-on-one with and I'll see how. That's probably where Alan Reynolds has a chat with his coaching staff this week. Does he say, I've got to be brave, I've got to try Hugh Martin. He's only 16, but we've seen Ojibwa, we've seen Noonan, we've seen these players, Mason Melia, play at 15, some of them 15, 16, 17. Does he throw in Hugh Martin? And is Alan Reynolds and our Bohemians brave enough to do that?
It's a funny one, this one, because, and Alan Reynolds was speaking about it in the post-match on Sunday, you go from the absolute high of the Aviva, 20-odd thousand there, such a huge occasion, with the caveat that the match didn't turn out as exciting as people hoped. And then you go down to, with all due respect to showgrounds, totally different type of game, totally different type of pitch. So it's a challenge for his players to meet that and try get their first win of the season. Obviously, question marks around Douglas James Taylor wasn't involved at all last Sunday. We'll have to wait and see on him. The Bows starting 11 was funny because we were trying to work out. I know we were both there in the first half. Jordan Flores was dropping into centre half sometimes. Then he go up to midfield. At other times, it seemed to vary from back four to back five. And then a little while later, we realised that they weren't playing with a recognised striker, that Conor Parsons, who started on the wing, was slotting in as a false nine or whatever you want to call it. But Sligo will really want to kick on after those two concessions at Derry last week. But
I think if they play the way they played in the first half, and again, it could be a changed team, they're waiting to see. Traore is one of the players they've signed on loan from Notts County. I think there's a work permit or a visa issue there with him. If they can get him into the squad, John Russell was, I think, spent a couple of days working on that this week. So if I was a Sligo Rovers fan, I wouldn't be too concerned if they play the way in the first half they did away to Derry. I think they'll be okay. So they have a chance now at home to Bohemians. Of course, they beat them last year. Probably the high point for Sligo Rovers last year, beating Bohemians in the FAI Cup.
The Oasis game.
Yeah, the Oasis game. And Valentine's Day. So what better way to spend Valentine's Day than in the showground? So that's a look ahead to game day 2 in the League of Ireland. We'll have, of course, all the usual reports, analysis, updates on the Irish Independent across the weekend.